the way you've written this particular book, and there might be others in the pipeline, which we'll come on to in a moment. Did you write each character's story separately, or did you dip in and out of them?
Yeah, it's a great question. I wrote, so there are two characters in the novel, two teenagers, David and Hassan, both of whom sort of start college, full of promise, and they both suffer quite senseless acts of violence and react to them in very different ways. David ends up getting sort of drawn closer towards the far right, and Hassan attempts a sort of more optimistic sort of reinvention of himself. So I wrote the whole of the David sections first, and then I wrote all of the Hassan sections, and then sort of ended up redrafting them both in tandem.
Okay. Yeah, because that was the follow-up, is because once you write one person's path and then you draw the next path alongside, you go, right, that's the crossover there. That's that's the connecting bridge.
Yeah.
Well, did you find any accidental crossovers that you didn't see on the first draft? Like, so did you kind of go, oh, hang on, they crossed there? Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, definitely. There definitely, some fortuitous, lucky sort of circumstances, which again, with the myth making, I can, afterwards you're like, well, so one of the things I really wanted to do, but no, there were definitely, aspects that I just realized, oh yeah, actually, this chimes well with this. Part of that's in this sort of scenario is simply actually realizing that these teenagers, despite coming from very different worlds and taking very different directions, actually are very similar in many ways, and I think maybe more similar than I realized or even sort of intended them to be.
Did writing this deliberately or accidentally create a second story for you in either the same guise or totally different direction?
So I'm working on another novel at the moment. It's still in the fringes of society. I think part of it was sort of wanting to explore things I haven't done in this novel. So it
Haven't because you couldn't, or that you just didn't?
I think in part because it didn't work in this novel, and in part because about sort of halfway through, I sort of knew I wanted to write that next. So it became sort of tactical as well.
Okay.
There's
a multi-book deal going on
here.
Yeah,
exactly.
Well done, Nicholas. You're a genius.
Hello,
Netflix. Are you on? Yeah. Multi-million-pound series. Absolutely.
So yeah, the next one, wanting to really explore sort of loneliness and resentment in society today, looking at sort of empty, meaningless work, the sort of challenges of multiculturalism, but also particularly the communities that have formed online around romantic and sexual failure. So from sort of incels to Reddit's forever alone women. And one big sort of difference in that world is just a total absence of hope. For all of the degradation that David might experience, he always has hope. There's always this sense, this belief that he's destined for something bigger, and it might be totally misguided, but he believes that the future will be bright for him, bright for his race, bright for the culture he wants to save. Whereas in the sort of world of incels, in the world of Reddit's forever alone women, there is a total absence of hope, and it's a real flattening of your days when that happens. There's a real sense for people of sort of dying of sadness. And I think that's something I want to sort of explore, what it is to go through, day after day without a hope of things getting better. And even your whole identity becomes based around the badge of pride that you have no hope, that you are the pit, the bottom of society. That's the best thing about you. So you can't give that away, and you don't even want hope anymore. But how do you function day by day with that? So from that perspective, although it's the fringes of society, it is different to the sort of the far right radicals who believe they're on the shining white horse coming to save people. There's no horse for for those guys.
I don't know how you did it, but all of that passion is captured in black and white in that. I don't know how you did it. I mean, it's magic to me. Quite frankly, I will never understand it probably, but all of that passion for it is captured in this so beautifully. However, I wonder if you know something today about writing a book that you didn't know at the start, that perhaps if we had a DeLorean, we could clear Parkway, we could hit 88, go back, and you do it slightly differently.
Oh, really good question. I mean, I think one thing I could say, and it's one thing I think I didn't know really coming into, and this is more about subject matter, I guess, of the book. I think I underestimated the importance and the sense to which, belonging to an extremist community, we think of, the trolling of, minorities, the trolling of the left wing, and, the terrible sort of hate campaigns. But there is another side to which, it is just tremendous fun. And it brings so much to so many people's lives, right? Like, people aren't in these extremist communities suffering terribly, being in them day by day, but having to do it. They do it because it gives them purpose, it gives them enjoyment, it gives them people to laugh with, to share stories with. It gives meaning to their lives. And there's this sort of weird sense in which, it might be on a societal level incredibly damaging, but on a personal level, actually, it really boosts a lot of people's mental health, is the truth of it, And I think that's something I underestimated, but is sort of, immeasurably important to them and clearly true, and very hard to understand extremism without knowing that and getting that. So that's definitely something I underestimated, but learned through writing the book, and sort of taken outside the writing realm to understand generally better. In terms of the writing process, I'd like to say there was something I'd learned, and I'd like to think sort of it gets easier each time, but I don't think it does. I feel like it's harder the second time round.
Yeah, I'll break some news to you. I've met some people who've written upwards of 45, 50 books, and they still struggle.
Yeah.
So I'm afraid to say it's not going to get any easier. No. According to them, it certainly doesn't.
Even harder than this one.
Before you read us a little bit from the end, is there something you would like us to have in our minds when we read this book? And you really should. You can buy copies with us here today. Because I went into it knowing full well we were going to chat about it. So I kind of approached this book probably in a slightly different mindset to if I were just reading it in my next pile of my TBRs, my to be read pile. Someone said that to me the other day. I like it a lot. TBR pile. Sounds like a car. Is there something you would like us to just a thought to hold on to when we start reading this?
Yeah, I think to go in with an open mind and to sort of look at it as a way of trying to understand radicalization better, and to engage seriously with the sort of causes and consequences of extremism, to understand that there is a lot beyond the black and white narratives, and again to sort of try and not necessarily empathize or not necessarily even sympathize, but to sort of see that there are reasons why these kids get drawn into these extremist circles, and that the sort of the texture of their life has been changed totally by it, and often positively by it. And that's really sort of disturbing to know, but it's true.